Welcome to the Catholic Dadcast by Rich Pintang, where we break down all things dad from a Catholic perspective. Now more than ever, we need dads to step up their game. Gentlemen, buckle up and get ready for battle. Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Catholic Dadcast. I am Rich Pintang, your host and founder, and we are coming out of 2023 on fire. And I gotta say, I was very pleased and happy that my friend and brother in Christ in the community said yes to being on the show. And I'm telling you, in life, the storms will come and go. And I would say that the weather here in Southern California has kind of been like that. But I'm just so happy that my friend here was able to block some time out to bless the airwaves. And just so you guys have some kind of frame of reference, he is a doctor of medicine, currently working in different capacities, but also, helping out with urgent care at St. Jude. He is married to Jenny for going on this year, 15 years of marriage, praise God, and 4 children, ranging from 5 years old to 12 years old. Oh, and isn't it lovely to have a teen about to turn the corner? I'm sure we'll get into that too. But I want to just welcome my brother in Christ, Mr. Jason Jilk.
Well, thank you, Rich. It's a privilege and honor to be on the show with you.
Hey, man. I was just thinking to myself that with the new year ahead of us, I was like, man, I always like reflect back on like the year that passed, and then I'm always like, did I like put forth the effort I'd want, right? And I think having a chance to kind of reflect on this here with you is pretty darn cool. But you're recovering, right? You're recovering from being sick over the break. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Our whole family got sick. I was the only one who got COVID, but for the entire Christmas and New Year vacation or time off, we were mostly just hanging around the house. But it was nice. We got to play a lot of board games. And so in the end, it was probably, good for our family. We got to do a lot of bonding and just, time together.
I think what I appreciate is that you understand how something as simple as a board game can get everyone together, right? And as tough as it can be, like, to me, man, those are the things like that they'll remember, growing up, and man, that I tell you, that's exactly what I really want to dive into is the different aspects of your faith and how that ties into your marriage and why you lead with faith, and how you tend to be someone that I think takes fatherhood very seriously. And so I want to make sure I break into that. But I think to start, Jason, I would love to hear kind of what it was like, because I think you're a cradle Catholic just like me. So just want to get an idea of what it was like, in your household, in the in the Jilk household growing up.
Yeah. I was blessed to be a part of a family with 2 parents who are both very religious and very Catholic. My dad was a cradle Catholic, so on that side of the family, I've got a ton of cousins and aunts and uncles who are all very involved at their churches. On my mom's side of the family, my mom's actually a convert. And so I've been blessed to kind of understand how passionate, converts can be. Neither of her parents were Catholic, but her godmother was, and she chose that she wanted to be, to follow Christ. I think she saw the happiness and joy and stability that that faith can provide, because a lot of her other family members who were older than her, because she was the youngest in her family, went through a lot of hard stuff, a lot of instability. And so, I'm kind of blessed to see both perspectives. And coming from both those backgrounds, they're both my parents, my mom and my dad, are very passionate about Christ and their faith. And both my parents are very they're the type of Catholics who lead with action. And so I was blessed not only to get to go to church every Sunday and participate in all the sacraments and kind of have all that handed to me. You got to go to Catholic school, elementary school, and Catholic high school, but also to see what it's like to be involved beyond just going to church. My dad was involved in the church in many ways. He helped run their festival for decades. I actually took over running the ice cream booth for several years at St. Pius in Buena Park before the festival ended. My dad was a Eucharistic minister. He counted money. He was pretty much ran the money counting. He would do Eucharist to the sick as well. And my mom was an usher. And of course, they got us involved in choir, altar serving.
You were in choir, really?
Oh yeah. Before I hit puberty, I actually had a really good voice.
Before puberty. You're a brave man.
Yeah. They would actually put me with the girls section because I had a very female-like voice, I guess. But then I hit puberty and that kind of ended. And then, outside of church, they continued to live the Catholic and Christian example. For a couple of years, we actually had a family from a mom and daughter refugee from Yugoslavia living in our back room. They didn't have to pay rent, and they just lived with us for several years growing up. When there, we had a young adult who was having some problems, and she ended up living with us for a couple of years as well. There was a teenager who was also having some problems who came to live with us for a couple of years. And my parents just did that. Several times we would, be, just out and about, and someone would need help. They'd have a sign, need food. And, my parents didn't like to give money. So we would take them to a nearby restaurant and eat with them and ask them, what's going on, how things going. So there was an Arby's next to St. Pius, and I can't tell you how many times we walked over after Mass with someone who was unfortunate, maybe homeless, and had dinner at Arby's with them. So, those sort of examples of, good Christ-like behavior and service to others, I think is what inspired me to, want to do that same sort of stuff. It also inspired me to, I think, want to be a doctor because I wanted to serve people in that capacity. Wow. So yeah, their faith had a huge impact on my life. And actually, if you don't mind me mentioning it, I did want to say that my dad and you actually have something in common. I know you were nominated for the Catholic Man of the Year, and my dad actually was nominated for Catholic Man of the Year several years back as well.
Okay, the rumors are true. The rumors are true. Yeah. That's amazing to hear that, because really this year was the first time I had heard about St. Joseph Radio, right? And but that's amazing to me to hear that, because you get to, I mean, the way, especially the way you just explained it, Jason, I could see how you saw what I think was a healthy male role model, right? That you, for the most part, knew this is the way we act, this is the way we behave, this is how we give back. And um and then and you're right, man. I think I I was very humbled by, one of my brothers, my brother Joel, who just was like, tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, I think people need to hear about what the work you do. And I really didn't want it. I quite honestly, I did not want I didn't want that spotlight for different reasons, right? But then the application sat in my kitchen for like 4 days, 5 days, and Remy kept asking me, "What is this?" And I'm like, Joel, he's always just trying to get me to do something. And then eventually I placed a call to him, and I'm like, "Hey, tell me about this." And he told me how involved he was. And he kind of patted me on the back. He's like, I do have a great deal of respect for you. So it's odd to me, because my experience there was more than I could have asked for. And there was 15 of us, and I did not, although I was not awarded Catholic Man of the Year, I was just blown away to see not only like my friends and family that wanted to be there for that night, break bread and just look at all the amazing things that these men are doing, but to have my parents there. So I'm actually very curious what it was like for you, now that you said it, like what it was like for you, um if you could rewind and look back at like what it was like hearing and seeing how the community praised what your dad had done.
Yeah. I mean, I, me and my family, my brothers and sisters, and we had some other relatives, some of my uncles and aunts, I think, had come, and just some family friends that were invited to come. We rolled fairly large, and yeah, I mean, it was no surprise for me that my dad would eventually be nominated, for it. I actually had never heard of it before, but once he was nominated, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense, because he's just he just serves the church. He spends countless hours a week, just whenever they need something, he always says yes. I don't think he's ever said no to the church. um, so again, to me, I think it was no surprise that he got nominated. But then like you said, there's another like 15 people who get nominated, and to hear their stories, that's what really blew me away. I mean, a lot of them had started nonprofits, were helping, with, several of them had been foster parents, adopted kids, just the great work that some of the men in Orange County and in our communities are doing. It just blows you away. So I was very blessed to be able to see that, and inspired by some of the work that a lot of other people are doing. Some of them seem like saints, living saints. I mean, you're like, wow.
Right. And then I felt I was in awe. I definitely was in awe to hear. And Stan Inarane, I mean, ex-cop, ex-military, to see how for decades he's been serving the community, and quite frankly, in today's society, there's always something we can do, and serving the community really isn't always one of them, right? So to see these men, and to hear them and to meet them, like I left inspired. And I think I think eventually I'll look back at it, because I had my whole a lot of my close entourage there, and I think a lot of them have a great deal of influence on my faith journey, right, and my faith formation. And I think allowing my kids to see like that if you put your trust in the Lord, there's so many things that are possible. Like you have no idea how the Lord can work in your life. And then on top of that, I had my parents in town, coming to town early because it was at the beginning of December. So they came early instead of coming during the holidays. They came early December, and to have them there was cool. And in fact, one of my buddies was like, I saw the way your dad high-fived you after they presented your certificate, and he's like, that was a proud dad. And I was like, oh dude, that was cool, man. That was cool that you caught that.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That would be awesome.
But again, and that to me is like, so it goes to like the importance of how we show up as the faith leader in our homes, in our community, and in society, right? And Mother Teresa has a great quote about how if you want to change the world, start with your home. I'm like, it's so simplistic, but sometimes there's so many competing priorities. Sometimes we forget. I mean, maybe you can share with us like what it's like with with your relationship with Jenny, because again, her coming from maybe converting, but also um how you guys um stay on the same page when it comes to where to spend your time and your faith.
Yeah. Well, Jenny was actually a cradle Catholic too.
Okay.
It was my mom who was a convert, but
Mm-hmm.
in fact, Jenny and I actually met at St. Pius in Buena Park. Um, she was an altar server when I was a Eucharistic. She was an altar server all the way up until she went to college. So, and I was a Eucharistic minister
Oh, that's so
starting
cute,
like
dude.
junior year of high school. So
what a great little story right there. Just that, I love it.
yeah, so she'd be on one end of the altar, I'd be on the other end at the 6:30 mass, and
Uh-huh.
I'd try not to make it too obvious that I was staring at her.
That's so great. I love it. I never knew that about you guys.
Yeah. So her faith is very important to her as well, as is to her parents. And I think she was raised with that example from her parents, just like I was raised with that example from mine. And so now I think we both find it very important that we emphasize the importance of faith to our children. We to us, I think the greatest achievement in life would be that our kids grow up with a strong faith, that they grow up knowing the love of Jesus and God, and that they grow up learning to how important, knowing how important it is to share that love with others. So we do the bit, we pray meals together. When we put the kids to bed, probably 90% of the nights we'll say prayers with them going to bed. She's very involved at the school. Our kids go to a Catholic school, St. Francis Assisi in Yorba Linda, and she's in leadership with the Catholic Identity Ministry. So she gets to help with planning some of the events, like for Advent and Lent and other feast days that help the kids learn about saints and Catholic tradition. She's also a spiritual room mom for 2 of the 4 kids' classes. So she's very involved at the school, and they get to see her practicing her faith, teaching other kids at school things about the faith. And I think for me, they tend to ask me more of the religious questions, and sometimes I don't even know where I come up with these answers. I think it's just the Holy Spirit.
Holy
I'm like,
Spirit.
wow. I mean, seriously, it's like I'll say something. I'm like, man, I wish I recorded that. That sounded really good. So that's what the Holy Spirit is acting through me. But yeah, sometimes the kids will ask some deep questions, and so we've even with my oldest, we've had some pretty deep conversations about about all sorts of stuff. Of course, heaven and hell, and the expectations that God has. How difficult it can be or impossible to serve two masters. To serve God and to serve our own desires, basically. We've talked about gender identity issues, as they come up in society and stuff like that, and it's challenging, but when I see that my kids like get it, I'm like, oh, thank God. Thank you for giving me the right words.
Yeah, man, I was gonna say that it has to be said, and but you also have to find those opportunities, because I think life's so quick, things happen so fast. You have your attention elsewhere, and obviously you guys are dealing with the individual needs of 4 very different children, right? And they're competing for your attention. And I'd rather not have the answer and have them ask me than for them to go and think they found the answer elsewhere. That's the way I see it, Jason. But so 2 things. So the first thing, when it comes to the spiritual room mom, there was one time that I don't know what possessed me to, but I put my name down as the spiritual room parent. And I kid you not, someone pulled me aside, and it was a mom. I'm not going to say her name, Jen. She said to me, I can't believe you put your name down there. I take that every year. I take that position every year. I said, I just want to give it a shot. I just want to give it a shot. So every time they would say spiritual room moms, I would be like,
yeah, I apologize. I meant spiritual room parent.
So, but I just joke about that because I think the male voice is very different than what they might see every year from a spiritual room mom. The second thing I was going to tell you was, as far as the gender identity, I think that was like one thing that I continue to water that seed about giving them some psychologically safe space to ask, right? And I always tie it back to the Holy Family, right? And then I think to have a third party speak on it, we're going to be, all 4 of us are going to go see Jason Everett at St. Martin's and hear it there, because this whole situation we have in society did not happen overnight. And as the provider and protector of the home, I have to feel good that it's clear, it's crystal clear. And if there is any doubt, that we have the relationship with our kids to have that conversation. Because I've seen so many families, just like your family and my family, where we feel like we've done everything right, and yet the devil's sunk his teeth in and caused chaos with a child, and that saddens me. And that's why I pray that we can see the gift of life and what it is, that how we were made, and how you just don't want to try to play God, because it just will not end well when you do. But that's my 2 thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, society, even going back to Jesus's time, in the Roman society, they have their agenda, and they want people to think the way they do. So today's society really is pushing hard to make us believe that certain things should be a certain way that aren't necessarily in agreement with what our faith teaches us. And my oldest is 12, so I've only recently started delving into it, because I've seen her watch some videos on YouTube, and something will come up, and I say, number one, you shouldn't be watching that video, and number two, let's put it in context. Let's explain what you saw that you shouldn't have been watching. But luckily, my younger ones, haven't, I don't think, really been exposed to a lot of the things going on, in society. We don't, let them, watch whatever they want. We pretty much control, what they get to watch. And although, we're probably more loose than a lot of families with some of the cartoons they get to watch. But at any rate, but yeah, so you have older kids. I'm sure you've had to do. I'm new to having these discussions.
Well, yeah, I have, with Kai being 12 and turning 13 in March, I'm doing a very purposeful, what I would call a rite of passage, where it's very defined that you're going from a boy to a man. You may not feel like a man yet, but I want it to be very clear to him that this is the time, right? And I'm not trying to overcomplicate it, Jason, but I would say that I want them to be very clear. You're a beautiful child of God, created in His likeness and image, and God will work through us, through our brokenness, our flaws, our sinful ways, right? And I think that for you, obviously, because my daughter being 17, I see that when you lead by faith and they see your faith in action, like you and I have talked about, you tend to see that they get it. They start to get it, right? We can say all we want, but it's truly still their relationship with the Lord. And we make sure that they see this is what a healthy relationship is like, right? You and Jenny, myself and Remy, we have to exemplify that. And when we disagree on something, we have to uphold the fact that you just can't completely smash someone in an argument. It has to be very fair. It has to be respectful. And when I fall short, I have to, exemplify the humility, ask for forgiveness, and just eat crow. You know what I mean? And I suppose the the Bible verse I wanted to share, which I felt was like very much ties into, how sometimes we're viewed as, the discipline in the house. I am the heavy hand. You tend to be the bad cop also?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Guilty. But the Bible verse that I pulled out was, it was in Ephesians 6:4, where it just says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up with the training and instruction of the Lord." So I look at that and I just think, how many times have I maybe poked at them? Not because I'm necessarily angry at them, but it stems from something else that's got me heated, right?
Yeah.
Between repeating ourselves and saying, "Are you ignoring me?" That kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But I thought that was very, very pertinent. But when it comes to like disciplining the kids, I mean, how do you approach that when it, approaching it with love, but how do you approach that when you know that it can be taken the wrong way?
Yeah. I mean, we with our parenting try to be transparent. We tell them, if you do this action, there's going to be this punishment. We try our best not to throw out unexpected punishment, like, okay, well, you did this and there's going to be this big punishment. We may say, if you do that again, then you're going to get this sort of punishment. Because it is really easy to try and punish them for everything they do. But the truth of the matter is, it's probably best to let the small things slide, and let them know, if you do this behavior, this is what's going to happen. And we mostly, for the younger ones, do timeouts, and for the older ones, you'll say you can't play with your Nintendo or your iPad, or when we go to, we have Knott's Berry Farm amusement park passes. We say when you go to Knott's Berry Farm, you're going to have to sit down the first couple of rides, that sort of stuff. It's not. I don't think we're as harsh, maybe, as as maybe my parents' generation, or their parents' generation.
For sure.
But I think that kids just get it. They know. I think most of the punishment is just knowing that you were kind of disappointed that they did whatever they had done, and a lot of times that alone is punishment enough.
I think you're right, because it's also the threat, right? The threat of this happening, helping them correlate between, you make decisions and you take certain actions, and if you choose to, this is what happens, right?
Yeah.
You get something taken away. Because man, me growing up, fortunately my two older brothers really made a majority of the mistakes, and I learned about, oh, don't go there, don't do that, right? But the one thing that my mom would do is she would pinch, and it was just like, it was like more irritating than anything. But I'm like, okay, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, I think a lot of that was stemming from stress, for one reason or another, trying to keep the lights on, and lack of sleep, right, as a nurse and things like that. Where my dad, when it came to disciplining, he just was not great at communication. And I think that's why the way that I try to parent, is I try to allow there to be communication, so that it's, here's why. There's an actual story about, when it comes to punishments, that I think it's a classic example. I won't go into exactly why, but my daughter did something dishonest, and it's very unlike her, right? I give her that. It's unlike her. And I came home, and she's distraught, she's distraught on the couch with talking to my wife, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, this, it's very unlike her to be like that. And I remember, she waved me off. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, like, she doesn't just wave me off, but she knew, I think, like, I was gonna make things worse.
Yeah.
So like later on, as things cool down, like, Remy tells me, well, this is what she was dishonest about, and she got caught, right? And I'm like, oh, I wonder why she would do that. Like, why would you just do that? Anyways, she ended up bringing someone home that she wasn't driving someone home when she wasn't supposed to be driving with somebody, right? So at the end of the day, what I was trying to get at was, her guilt was so big that she almost had to, she thought it was so severe that she gave herself two weeks of being grounded. And to
She punished
me,
herself.
yes, I said, I let her share with me. I'm like, I'm not sure why you did that, and I said, tell me what you were thinking. So that's all I said. Tell me what you were thinking.
Yeah.
So she goes through the decision process, right? And then I said, well, it's very unlike you. What do you think? What do you think the punishment should be? So I mean, that's how bad she thought it was. And she was beating herself up. So I didn't even have to do that work, because she knew she made that choice. She didn't have to make that choice. And eventually, like, I even asked Remy behind the scenes, I'm like, well, what do you think it should be? She's like, a week. I'm like, okay, I said to her, that's fair. I'm going to let her choose. And she chose 2 weeks. So I'm like, okay. So, you go a week, good behavior, and then you look like a hero.
Yeah.
because she got up. But my whole point is, if you have that relationship behind the scenes, then you don't feel like a tyrant. You don't feel like you're just completely beating them up. But it's what you can expect, right? Is the teenage years, there's so much impulsivity that you just forget that sometimes you have to recognize that's a characteristic of teenagers. And maybe you're starting to see those things. I mean, you started to see that?
Oh, absolutely. No, some of the things we did as teens, yeah, you start seeing your kids do them, and you're like, all right, well, that one's not so bad. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll leave that one be. No, that one not so good. Um, but I think it does help too for your kids to know that we all make mistakes.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and my little ones, I don't know, it was probably like 6 months ago. Um, gosh, which one of them? One of them had taken something they shouldn't have, I think, at school and brought it home. Maybe it was like one of those book sale things, and they took something from there and didn't pay for it. Um, so other than, of course, making them return it, and write a note, I told them about how when I was around that age, I think I was probably like 7 or 8. Um, there was like this clip it was like Kmart or something, and it's like a clip for like closing a bag of chips, something really cheap. But for whatever reason, I really wanted it, and I was actually out with my grandma, and I asked her if I could get it, and she said no. And I ended up just taking it, and so when we got back to her house, she saw had taken it, and so she made me return it, and to the store, and apologize and everything. So I told my kids that story. I said, look, I did the same thing. I remember, I was a kid too, and I remember wanting something and being told I couldn't have it, and you know, so so they don't feel like bad. I mean, yeah, they were punished for what they did. They had to return it, they had to write a note, but at the same time, knowing that they're just human, and it's normal to sin. It's what we do afterwards, to make up for the sin, right? The
See,
penance.
I was gonna say that, like, I tend to be somewhat on the sarcastic side, and I would be the one that would be pointing at the commandments on the wall and be like, "Which one of these is most important?" They're reading through, and they're like, "Oh." Hey, dude. So, you know, as we start to kind of start wrapping up, I was just gonna ask you, like, what do you think? What do you think? What kind of advice, um, for the dads that, let's say, you think might be really frustrated about how to lead, by example when it comes to their faith for their family. Like, what kind of practical advice you might be able to offer them on ways to really lead from the front when it comes to the faith.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have to ask ourselves as parents is, what's going to make us most proud of our kids when they're 20, 30, 40? Is it that they're a professional baseball player? Is that what we think will make us most proud? If that's the case, then spend a ton of time doing sports with them. Absolutely. If it's being a doctor or a lawyer or something, then absolutely, you should, you know, lead by example, show them, you know, what it's like, to serve people in that capacity. Fine. But, if what's most important to you is that your kids love God, they go to church regularly, they pray regularly, that they show the love of God to other people, that they help other people in need, even when it's inconvenient or difficult, then that's what your kids need to see you doing. So, they're often going to emulate what you did, what they saw you do. And so when you have those opportunities, when there is that person who has the sign out, they need help, they need food for their family, um, you know take them to go buy groceries for their family. You know um, uh, show them what it's like to be a leader in the church, get involved in church. um, when they see you doing something, whether it's for the church festival, whether it's for the Skid Row ministry, whether it's you know, being a lector, whatever it is, an usher. They're going to want to do stuff like that when they get older. Um, so, so, do the things that you want to see your kids doing when they're your age. And there's a good chance they'll do it because they're going to see you do it. And you're going to see how important it was to you. And it's going to be important to them.
Yeah, and I think it's all the fruits that come from serving, and it revolves around, looking at where you can, you know, give back, so that it's not just about us, because we're in a society, Jason, where it's very easy to only think of ourselves. And granted, it's a different day and age today, but I would say that a lot of times things will very much be put in perspective when you're there distributing clothes at Skid Row to people that haven't had too many meals, haven't showered, are living on the streets, have had some pretty rough times. And it doesn't have to be necessarily as extravagant as that, but I think taking a heavy a regular healthy dose of humility like that, it just really shows you how fortunate we are, right? And the one thing that I always tell the kids when I drop off my son and my godson, I always say, hey, make sure you guys be a blessing to somebody today. Give it your all because God's watching you. And I tell them that because I don't know what they're going to do, but I hope at some point they realize, like, I'm not doing my part. Right. And that's the beauty of being able, as a husband and wife, to be able to do that and find those opportunities to be a blessing to someone. And it really doesn't have to be extravagant. If anything, it's just finding those people that maybe just need that word of encouragement. Those gestures go a long way, brother. But I'm very appreciative of your time with me today. And I would say that if we can encourage the other men to really look at how they can be more active in the community, and do that in conjunction with being the leaders of their household, and getting their kids involved. There's plenty of things going on at church um, that will really bring out the best in our kids and in our family, that I believe when they are adults and they come back and they say, Dad, I remember growing up when we did this. There's nothing sweeter than having that conversation when they're adults. To me, I look forward to that, because I'm sure you feel this way. Sometimes you're like, I don't even know if these kids are watching or they're paying attention, but they are. They totally are. Any closing thoughts that you'd like to leave us with, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly as you say. To me, I would be happy if I could be half the Christian that either my mom or my dad, are. And I think that would be the greatest accomplishment I could have in life. Is just to be half as good at following, you know, Jesus's instruction to love and serve others as they have been. And so, if my kids, grow up and have that same goal, just to be, hopefully better than I did, but that's what I hope for them. But if they look and say, yeah, I want to be like my mom, I want to be like my dad, and I want to help others whenever I can. That's what I hope that they find it to be important in their lives.
Yeah, and it is our responsibility, and I take it very seriously. So I even recently experienced, a death here in our neighborhood. I mean, he was a dad just like us, 38 years old. And I don't think you're always going to kind of question God about why him. But I think I want to live my life like I think a lot of us do, is that if it's my time to go, I'm going to trust that was God's will for me. He's done using me here on earth, and he has other things in store for me. So um you always live I think you always live life to the fullest, and that's the reason why. Because when it's your time, you want to feel like you've left you've left it all on the field, as athletes say, so. But hey, brother, I appreciate everything you do. I will continue to pray for you. Pray for me, because we're starting Exodus today, Exodus
Oh
90,
yeah.
and that's pretty heavy. But I think God will work in us, by through the program and everything. But God bless you and the family. Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely pray for you with the Exodus 90. That's intense, but I'm sure you'll be better off for it.
Well, brothers and sisters, this podcast episode has ended. Go now in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks
Amen.
be to God.